just actually anonymously creating a space for people to write expectations of today. So if I'm not hitting something that you want hit, I can tweak this afternoon. Expectations of the 6-month program, expectations of what happens next, just so that there's a space where some things have been written that are helpful for the whole project and helpful for the rest of today. Is that okay? Okay, brilliant. Yes. I know. She's a happy, smiley first grade teacher. She is. I can't pull off that level of joy. Is this new tea? No. Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, people can write what they want to. So expectations for today. Obviously, make that explicit if it's about this afternoon, what you'd like to do, and then also expectations for the program as a whole and what you can be thinking about as a community. Or any other thought that you might want to just write up anonymously. That's the beauty of this tool.
Sorry, we were chatting over here.
Were you?
Are we getting on this? Are we getting on this again?
Expectations of the day, expectations of the project, expectations, ideas even about how this might, what you might want to move forward with. I just thought that was better than asking people or doing post-it notes, because then it's up there then, isn't it? Oh, tangible steps to create working cohesively. We will try and incorporate into that some strategies then. I mean, we have been looking at strategies as well, with working with individuals who are in that automatic state, that response state system, to bring people back to a place of safety. So we'll have a look at that. But first of all, I want you to activate your polyvagus nerve. Would you like to do that? Would you like to activate your polyvagus? Who wouldn't want to? Okay, so this is an exercise that I did with Stephen Porges in a masterclass he was running at a trauma conference I was at in Melbourne. And I think it's a really useful experiential way of understanding the power of breath. And when we throw into that, we'll throw into some stuff around there to sort of, that will be one of the greatest strategies that you have actually. So here's the exercise. If you don't understand it the first time, it's not you, it's me. Right? You need to find somebody whose face you like. Right? If you don't like someone's face, then this is quite an uncomfortable exercise. So, think carefully before you say, would you like to work with me? So I'm going to have you in pairs. If you want to do 3 of you, that's fine. And if you really don't want to do this, just sit and watch somebody doing it. But you can't all obviously do that, otherwise it's not going to happen. What you're going to do is you're going to take 10 breaths. Your partner is going to observe you. And I'm seeing you two are just checking out if you're going to work. Yeah, I like that. I like that. You're thinking, no, I can actually look at this man for this whole exercise. So one of you is going to observe, one of you is going to act in this process of breathing. You're going to take 10 breaths. The other person is going to watch you. Those breaths, you're going to inhale for 7 and exhale for 3. 10 times. Don't stop, please. 10 times. They're so keen over here. 10 times. And you're going to observe in yourself what that feels like, and you are going to be observed. Then you're going to swap, and the other person is going to do 10 breaths. Inhaling for 7, exhaling for 3. Then, if you haven't fainted, you're going to swap, and you're going to take, the other person is going to take 10 breaths. Inhaling for 3, I did tell you this was complicated. Inhaling for 3 and exhaling for 7. Observing in yourself, being observed, swap. Did you get me? Yeah. Are you sure? Yeah. You're amazing. That's never happened before. Okay, right, go. Find that face. Work with that face. In for 7, out for 3. Did anyone faint? Panic-inducing. Okay, that's really important. So panic-inducing. Anyone else? Anxiety, heart rate. Anything else? In for 7, out for 3. Say again? In for 7 and out for 3 was relaxing. How interesting. So in for 7. There's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong. So that was relaxing for you, but anxiety-inducing for someone else.
I was lightheaded.
Interesting. Say again?
Lightheaded.
Lightheaded, yeah. When I did it, I felt very angry, actually, yeah. But that's kind of anxiety wrapped up in a different... You wanted to get more out, yeah. It's like trapped in here. Yeah. And what about in for 3 and out for 7?
That's easier for me.
Easier for you? A lot easier. You got dizzy. Okay. So there's a few things that I'm picking up here. Not least how different we all are. But that space of allowing ourselves to consciously breathe. You said something quite interesting. Are you okay with me? Yeah? You don't care? Cool. So one of your question was, do I have to look at the person while I'm...
Oh, yeah. Well, we were kind of staring at each other.
Yeah.
That was part of, I thought, I guess I wasn't listening very well to instructions, and I thought part of it was we kind of had to, like, stare at them. So not only was I trying to breathe, but we're also, like, a stare down. As pretty as I think as it is. I see I scared her away.
Yeah, but what you said was you found it quite uncomfortable to look at somebody for that length of time. Actually, I do an exercise that I won't do in here that is about holding that space with a person and actually just looking at a person for 3 minutes. And it is incredibly powerful if you can do it, but if you can't, it's also incredibly powerful to realize that you can't, and that actually looking at somebody for that length of time is really quite challenging. The first time I did it, actually, I cried, but as we've seen, that's quite easy. But I just found it really emotional to look into somebody's soul space like that. So it is very normal to have those kind of feelings about looking at someone, which is why I always joke and say, find someone whose face you don't mind looking at. But the purpose of that exercise, in terms of the polyvagal theory, is that that's one of the ways that you can activate the vagus nerve and have good vagal tone, is having that conscious breathing. Who's into energy? Can you feel the energy shift in the room? You want a strategy? Breathing is a strategy. It's free. And providing you're not in your stress response system yourself, you will remember to breathe. The difficulty is if you are in your stress response system, one of the first things we forget to do is breathe. But if you are with somebody who is in a heightened state, who's activated, and you stand in a fairly close proximity with them and start to breathe on a deeper level, you can relax that person that you are with. Mirror neurons mean that some of you will have struggled to do the breathing exercise because you were so busy trying not to breathe like the person in front of you was breathing. Who had that? Yeah. Because you want to breathe your way, but they're breathing, and you are in such close proximity, it was very difficult for you to do that. So one strategy, which is why we'll be looking at self-care, is about how you regulate. Now, Molly says that I am too well regulated and I'm soporific. In other words, she wants to fall asleep when I'm talking. Too calm. Who knew you could be too calm? And that's largely because I've had to work so hard at managing my own system. So I breathe a lot deeply so that I can stand here and it's not a thing. I'm constantly in that process of self-regulation. Who's familiar with the term self-regulation? Everybody, right. That's all that's going on here, and I'm sorry if it's sleepy for you. But it keeps me in a really nice, calm place, so I like it. So one of the key strategies that is worth thinking about is how you are breathing. How is your regulation? How are you managing yourself when you're with somebody who's in distress? And it's not easy because you've got your own buttons. And if someone's coming at you, and I don't want to stay just in fight and flight, but if someone's coming at you in fight, you've got your own system to manage. And the key is to not get into that place with that person. And that's really difficult depending on who you are, what experiences you've had, what your experience of the world is, how well regulated your system is, how much work you do on yourself to stay in a calm place. Right, so, any questions on breathing? Will you remember to do it? Okay. So, just to let Molly know at the back, we got some really good stuff up. So we'll come back to that towards the end. Okay. Relationships. So, I would like us to do some speaking and listening. Speaking, listening, and connecting around your table. Right, there's too many people around the table, so you need to, otherwise we'll be here all day. So you need to do this in a group of 3 or 4. So this is how this is going to look. The question is, are you okay? At the giggly table. The question is, what are you thinking and feeling about today? What are you thinking and feeling? It's less about the today and more about the thinking and feeling. What are you thinking and feeling? What you're going to do, one person's going to start. Everybody else is going to listen to you intently. Does everyone know how to actively listen? Yeah? No one is going to interrupt anyone. Okay? When that person, and you only want to be doing 1 to 2 minutes each. When that person has finished, they're going to look to the next person and ask them the question, what are you thinking and feeling about today? And they will speak, and everyone will listen intently and actively. And when they've finished, they've decided they've said enough, they will turn to the next person and say, what are you thinking and feeling about today? So make 4 the top amount of people in that group. If you need to move, please do, so that you can do that. And we're going to do that and have that connecting, listening exercise. Probably take you about 10 minutes. Okay? So formulate yourself into groups of 4. So, how did that feel? How did that feel? How did that feel? How did that feel? Would you like to share first?
So I was just sharing that I went pretty deep pretty quickly because I have something going on in my personal life with my daughter. She was just diagnosed with an eating disorder, and so that is on my heart and mind absolutely all the time. And so she was just diagnosed yesterday. It really came to light what we're dealing with, and so of course it's in my psyche. So here we are talking, and how are you feeling? And we're kind of going, oh, what's our boundary here? What are we supposed to share? And I just thought, I'm going to be honest because this is where I am. And I said afterwards, I feel really guilty about sharing what I shared thoughts and feelings as I was talking. So they were so gracious and were saying, well, how what I said, like Mary said, I feel grateful, you know, that I didn't have that experience in my life, that I, you know, that's an experience that I didn't have. And, you know, and Danielle said, well, I feel guilty about sharing about the busyness of my life. And we all look at it so differently, you know, and then we start turning in on ourselves and judging our own experiences. So there was a lot going on. So.
What an incredible reflection, actually, and one that hasn't really come up when I've done this exercise before. So I'm really grateful that that came up, because I think there's just so much there, not least the kind of conversations we expect people to have with us, and yet think about that internal dialogue that was going on for all of you while you were just having a conversation. Just how complicated it can be sometimes to just have a conversation that involves connecting with somebody and being vulnerable. I think that's really powerful to reflect on. Thank you.
Talking about is a very common experience among everybody here and everybody we work with, you know, in one way, shape, or form, you know. So I think it's, you know, nothing else, it's a really good experience to say, hey, look, you know, this is me, this is who I am today, just like, you know, the clients, the people that we work with, you know, that's who they are. Okay.
And when you can connect with that vulnerability inside yourself, then it's much easier then to connect with that vulnerability inside another person. And what usually prevents us from doing that is that it's uncomfortable. Being vulnerable and connecting with our own inner crap is uncomfortable. So if we can do that in the safety of the community that you're working in, and people that you can choose to feel safe with, then it becomes much easier to develop that muscle of being able to do that with people that build the kind of relationships that enable healing to take place. So I love that. Okay, any other thoughts or things that came up that you weren't expecting? That can't be the only table. Go on.
So I found a lot of validation from sharing. So I ended up going last, and just so I'm so very new to Iowa in my current position in general. I moved here the start of January from out of state, and so I was just sharing. I don't know what I don't know, and how today I've been distracted a lot about some other things other than here because I don't have good answers to anything because I don't know what I don't know. And then as soon as we got around to chatting, everyone else was like, "Nope, I've been distracted today too by these other things going on in my life." So I was like, I found that really fulfilling and affirming.
Yeah.
Probably 15 other similar words.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, that ability to, that humanness and that vulnerability enables you to recognize that you're not on your own. And that is so powerful. That's why the, groups work well together, because you have those opportunities. What happened on this table? Thank you for that.
So one of the things that we reflected upon is just that in our day-to-day lives, we don't take opportunities just to say how we feel,
yeah,
and like what we're thinking and what we're feeling, and that it's just this constant next thing, hustle and bustle, until you fall asleep or pass out one too, right?
That's the normal thing.
That's the normal
the
thing,
usual thing that people really observe is how little time is spent actually listening to what someone else is saying without jumping in, interrupting, and answering what they think is going to be said next. And how little time is spent actually having the opportunity to ponder, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? Or just to mix it up, what am I thinking and feeling? So when we talk about strategies, I think sometimes we want really complicated things. We want things like, a pie chart that tells you to do this, do that, and then this will happen. But actually, some of the strategies are really straightforward. some of the strategies actually are about taking that time. And this is a resource issue, I know. Time is a resource. But if you're going to be working in collectively or working in a service that wants to really adopt this, then that resource is so valuable in terms of having those times to be able to have that connection. Schools don't traditionally have those spaces, do they? And I'm always fighting to try and get those spaces in schools. Any last thoughts on that before we move on? Did anyone not like it? Did everybody like sitting and listening and talking and getting to know someone? Yeah. I know. Okay. So resilience, another question. This is a word, I'm just curious as to, that's it, you'll have to go back to your table now, as to, do we have kind of a shared understanding of resilience, or is it yet another word where we think we understand what everyone means by resilience, but actually we all mean different things? So before I moved on, I just actually wanted to ask people what their understanding of the word is. Adapting. Bouncing back. Any other definitions, ideas?
The thing that keeps coming back to me, and it's something I mentioned to my partners earlier, it's about the concept of resiliency. My work has always been with children, and then I'll go into a court, or I'll go to a therapist, or I'll talk to an attorney, and, well, the children are resilient.
That really distresses me when I hear that.
It pisses me off.
Yeah, it pisses me off too.
So that's when I think of resilience.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So what you're sharing is it's a very emotive word, isn't it? It can be, depending on where it's been used and how you've heard it and what people are doing with it. And I agree, I've heard judges talk about children who've been abused and saying it's okay, they're resilient. No, actually they're surviving and coping, and that's an entirely different thing. Any other thoughts on resilience? I mean, I'm a bit hung up on this whole use of the word that is located very much in the individual. That's what I'm struggling with. That's how it's being interpreted a lot. I don't like that. So the Minnesota, this is what I found. Molly said that the steering group's done a definition, a working definition that's better than this one. But this is the one that I found. It's that result of a dynamic set of interactions between a person's adverse experiences and his or her protective factors. But even that statement forgets the relationship, that context that might be taking place in. Although a protective factor might be the relationships, would be the relationships that have been had, it misses it in the dynamic. So what it actually means is that we're seeking to increase protective factors and decrease risk factors. So we need to think about what those protective factors might be needed. So when we perhaps go into this afternoon session, we think about what protective factors there already are in your area, and what protective factors you might want to add, and what are your risk factors. We've talked about some risk factors already, and how might we want to address those. That has to be the work of a community project, I would say. Would you agree? Yeah. These are our protective factors, or they should be, except we know that they're not always. Our individual biological and developmental qualities, so we've talked about that in the context of human development, and the external influences around us. Okay, so what are resilience skills? What kind of things build resilience? Now remember, all of this is in a relational context. So, self-care is number one. But if you're not working in an environment that understands that the the biology and physiology of our systems requires that we have to take care of ourselves, then we have a problem. Because it's not this luxurious thing. Looking after our system is what the body needs. And I would go so far as to say that the way that we are living is not conducive to thriving. And if we think about the rise in poor mental health and well-being of children and young people, I think that is behaviour as communication, that something is not working. Anyone who's been around a long time who works with children, I would say, sees there's been a shift in children and the way that they're wiring up is different, particularly children who've only ever grown up around this. Because how do you wire up? If wiring up is relational and experiential, and this removes those opportunities, then we're going to wire up differently. That's inevitable. We don't have enough evidence, I don't think, for me to say we have this piece of evidence or that. And I wonder if there's a reason why we don't have enough evidence to say that. But that's what I view. That's what I see. That's what I think figures are telling us. Are your figures going up exponentially around mental health and well-being for young people and children? Because ours are through the roof in the UK. Literally through the roof. So something is not working in terms of how we develop and what we need. So it's very important that somehow that message is communicated around self-care and around being able to do that in our organisations that mean that we can take care of ourselves, because otherwise how are we fit for purpose? How are you fit for purpose if you're not able to regulate your own system because of the pressures and the stresses put upon you? So if you're in an organisation that says it wants to be trauma-informed, then that's my first question to that organisation. What is in place to make sure that your staff are the best that they can be to deliver the service that's required? The expectation that we can be immersed in suffering and loss daily and not be touched by it is as unrealistic as expecting to be able to walk through water without getting wet. I think that says it all. So what might be, I mean, this, please excuse the ABC prevention. It's just kind of what you do when you put slides together to try and make it look really straightforward. And I made these in Adobe. Has anyone used Adobe Illustrator? This took me a day and a half. It's time I'm never going to get back. Thank you very much. Do you know, you've got no idea how much I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, so awareness. Awareness is key. Awareness is everything, because you can't do something about something until you're aware of it. So how do we develop awareness? We have to know a little bit about ourselves. So if I said to you, where do you feel the sensation of anger in your body?
In my shoulders.
Shoulders. Where do you feel the sensation of anger in your body? You don't know? Okay, that's an answer. It's an interesting one. Where do you feel the sensation of anger in your body?
My chest.
Your chest. You? Not sure? Where do you feel it?
In my face.
In your face. Where do you feel it?
In my gut.
In your gut. Already, right, very simply, a few questions and we can establish that everybody feels emotions in different places in the body.
Can you ask a couple of more guys that question?
Well, it's interesting because the two guys that I did ask didn't know.
Right.
How about if I asked you, where do you feel fear?
Ask me that when I'm afraid. I don't know.
Interesting, interesting. And the other guy? Okay, this is interesting. It is. I don't know what it tells us, but it tells us something. It's interesting. What about you? Where do you feel fear?
Right in my chest.
In your chest, yes. So we all feel feelings. Thank you for being the man who knew where he was feeling fear. He's angry now. He's angry now.
I feel everything.
All over his body. He's feeling it all over his body. So awareness is about understanding where we feel things so that when it starts to happen, we can go, oh, that's interesting. I'm feeling that sensation in my chest, face, body, heart, whatever, that tells me that I'm getting quite frustrated and I need to go and do something so that I don't escalate. Right? This is also the work we have to do with children and young people and people in prisons. You know, if we're not understanding that we all feel things in different ways, then how can we work with somebody to help them identify that as well? So awareness is key, awareness of ourselves that enables us to then have those kind of conversations with people, not when they're in their automatic systems. That's not a good time. When someone's in their fight system asking them where they're feeling anger, that's not going to go well. There might be an off in it. So we don't ask those questions then. But when people are in a nice, calm place, then we can have those conversations. Or in a classroom, having those conversations in a classroom so that children are learning that people experience things in different ways. You're a counsellor, so in your one-to-one sessions with people, and you probably do that already. So that's how you develop that awareness so that you know what's going on in your body, so you know what's coming, so you know how to manage yourself. Balance, that's all about making sure that you take the time to do the things that you want to do, that you need to do. You know, the culture in America, you don't really have much on the way of holiday here, do you? I mean, I think Molly said you get like 10 days, and that was like if you're lucky.
10 days, and that is my sick time also.
And that's your sick time also. I'm going to have to speak. Is it? Who do I speak to about this? I'm not even going to tell you how many days we get off in different employments, because then you might not like me so much anymore. But I'm self-employed, so I tend to work most days. But I play most days as well. Yes?
So I was actually talking to my husband. The worst emotion I told him that I feel is jealousy. I can deal with anger, deal with fear, but when I feel jealousy, I feel like powerless.
It's a very, very overwhelming. So what? Just very quickly, what?
Paid maternity leave, like vacation, that makes me jealous.
Okay.
Balance.
Yeah. So I guess what we take from that is that need that you have for rest that you're not getting, that's been externally applied to you, that actually it's normal to need to want to rest and to rest the body. So you have to find very creative ways, because it's clearly not something inbuilt in your working culture that you have that time to do that. So making sure that we're going to have to get creative about how you do that, right? And connection, which is what we were doing earlier. That's part of that self-care, that ability to connect and making time to connect with other people. Number 2 is emotional awareness. So we've got all these pressures. We've talked about all these pressures that you can have. Always being connected all the time. Who unplugs? Who unplugs? Sometimes? Yeah. You have to actively make that decision, don't you? Because otherwise you are plugged into this global space and all of its noise all day. I wonder how many children and young people understand that it's their decision to do that they have to actively do that it's not going to unplug from you, you have to unplug from it. High levels of expectation. That's something else that I've really picked up here. I don't even know how to say it. There's a kind of very high levels. Do you feel like that there's really high levels? Yeah, she's going, oh. Yeah, I really feel that. I don't know if that's, I'm tempted to say that's a cultural thing as well. I feel quite inadequate a lot of the time when I come to America. Because it feels like such a high pressure, fitting in as much as you possibly can into every day. But yes, go on.
I think about resilience and I worry about youth in particularly related to those three. So connectivity and what you mentioned about disconnecting, intentionally disconnecting, because I don't know that youth know that they need to disconnect.
Mm-hmm.
Because they've never
I would agree.
been disconnected.
I would agree.
I mean, most of us in this room probably remember a time where we weren't always connected because there was no medium for us to be connected. You don't have that experience at all. So for them, even thinking about not being connected is just, it's not even in their, you know, kind of, it's not even, when they think about balance, that's not even what they think about. And then the media-driven social pressures contribute to that expectation of, I have to be on social media, I have to always be connected because that's how I know where the bar is set.
Yeah.
That's where those expectations are coming from. And so it really makes me nervous because it turns into an addiction for a lot of our youth.
Mm-hmm.
And it decreases, I think it's a risk factor. It decreases their ability to be resilient because they're so attached to
Yeah.
the connectivity. And so I think that's a challenge moving forward with resilience that we need to maybe be thinking about addressing in youth because so much of the issues that we see are driven by those topics.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. So what's the antidote? What's the antidote to that in a community setting? Go on.
Well, I was just going to add to that, too. I think that kids think that connecting over the internet or over video games, that is connecting.
You're
So
right,
it's a false
yes.
connection. And I think sometimes parents can also fall into that trap of saying, he doesn't do anything with other kids, but he's got friends online. And thinking, well, friends online is better than no friends at all. And so we're supporting this false connection
Yeah,
to some degree as well.
yeah. So what's the antidote to that? As a community? What's the opposite of that? Yeah, face-to-face, relationships, activities, opportunities, creating things to do. Yes.
I think kind of a piece of that, though, too, is the loss of, like, communal or
Yep.
community ideals, because we're so driven by fear that if you let your kids out and play, that something's going to happen to them, even though we also know the data says, like, what's going to happen to your kids is most likely by someone you know. And so when I lived in a lower income area, my daughter had community. She could just go outside and she could play all day. And then moving into a house, we don't have that same sort of like, well, you can just go outside and your friends are all outside because there's not many kids in our neighborhood. But it was kind of something that I noticed as a big difference for me raising a kid versus like friends raising kids a little
Yeah.
more isolated. It's just there's so much fear about sending your kids outside or different things like that because you don't have the ability to just do that. And it puts a lot of pressure too on parents
Yeah.
because you have to set up play dates for those connections. And
Yeah.
you have to put that into kind of all this other stuff and then you have all these expectations of work and then trying to find childcare and all these other issues
Yeah.
that make it hard to do that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I'm hearing that whole set of challenges, but what I'm also hearing is a whole set of potential, because you've pulled on something incredibly relevant and important and embedded in community. So in terms of the 6-month plan and thinking about what can a steering group pull together, the first project you might want to pull together might actually be something that is around young people and creating more of those spaces. Yeah.
I think when we think about the youth too, that we also have to go back to modeling behavior, because I think, I mean, as simple as it sounds, it's probably the answer. Because I think we have this whole glorification of being busy in this country and in this culture. And, you know, if you're a mom, the busier you are, the better a mom you are. You know, the more you're doing things and the more you can check off your list, the better you must be.
Okay.
I think that's true for probably professionals too. The more you get done in a day, the better.
And so what I would suggest to you, because I think you're right, what I would suggest to you is that to not be that person requires courage.
Right.
Deep courage. To not be that person that has to be busy all the time, that is allowed to be doing nothing sometimes, that is able to take that space sometimes, and that it's seen as doing something. That doing nothing is doing something because it is holding your system.
And it costs. It's risky to be that person.
It is.
It's risky.
But
if you model that behavior,
yes.
Kids can learn from that.
Yes.
I have the very fortunate experience to be married to an introvert who also happens to be a very engaged father, like a different person when he's a father.
Yeah.
But he needs his alone time.
Yeah.
So my kids now can actually verbalize, like, I need alone time, Mom. I need alone time.
Yeah.
And that's because nothing I've done, it's all him. You know, they have been able to see that in someone who actually cannot function without that disconnect and downtime.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when they see him asking for it, then it's okay for them to ask for it.
Yeah. So this is really useful. It seems really simple and perhaps too simple, but I think this is the stuff that's really useful, actually, in thinking about how do we model that? How do we step outside of those expectations? Because I see it and I feel it when I come here. I mean, I too am an introvert. I know that's hard to believe because I'm standing up here, but I am. After today, I'll be absolutely, that's a lot of people for me to be around. So I go and withdraw and retreat. But yeah, that's, and as a consequence, both of my kids are kind of like that too, which is really interesting. So yeah, that's something else for us to think about. How are we going to be courageous enough to go against that grain? Because it's tied up, it seems to me, with particular notions about what success is. So emotional intelligence, which you'll have heard of and be very aware of because it came out in the 90s, but is still very relevant today, is that ability to be able to articulate what is going on in our internal spaces. That's a vital part of this jigsaw because that's how we are able to learn how to communicate with each other. And deal with frustration and be able to wait to get what you want, keep distress from overwhelming your ability to think. Regulation, I hope we've talked a little bit about. It's that ability to be able to manage your own system. I don't want you under any illusions that sometimes I don't manage my system, because sometimes I don't. But I tend to use breathing to be able to do that. I'm very aware we're going to have a cup of tea in a minute. Coping skills. So this is, are you all familiar with Bronfenbrenner's theory? Yes, brilliant. So this is the understanding of resilience as part of an ecosystem. You have the person in the middle, then their friends and social networks and families, the peers, work and school, the parents' work environment, the culture, the economic system and the laws. And we all know how they all interact with each other. But it's about thinking about how you strengthen those areas around the person. That's what builds resilience. That's what you're all in action. That's what that is in action in here right now. Oh, I just threw this on because I just absolutely love this painting. And I like it as well because all the red is the energy. just passing that healing energy from one person to the next person, to the person who needs it the most. I should have written down who painted that. It's so lovely. And Segal's Healthy Mind Platter, which you'll find in Molly's Thrive model as well. Sleep time, physical time, focus time, connecting time, play time, downtime, timing. I will say, interestingly, this again is quite a cultural thing as well, in terms of thinking about how we take the time that we need and what that looks like. And also, depending on whether you draw some more energy from people or away from people, is worth thinking about. And then thinking about social skills, because it's social skills that enable us to connect. So I put this together. This is communication for connection. When I realized I was, again, making assumptions about what it means to build a relationship. So this is something I use with emotion coaching, which is a strategy that I use in schools around teachers and pupils and meeting behavior in the moment. And just have a think, really. So what does non-relationship-based communication look like? Well, it's about compliance. So think about the environments you work in. Compliance, this demands that you do as you are told without question. Fear, this states do as I say or you will be punished. It's full of labels saying what's wrong with you. It's about being fixed. Doesn't carry the idea that we change and we have plasticity, but that we're fixed. It states don't question me. It's about being right. It's full of pressure. It offers little understanding of the nervous system. It responds in an authoritative, avoidant or dismissive way, and it believes that we are different from one another, that somehow there is an us and a them, rather than just humans. And then relationship-based connection is about empowerment, so working with each other. It's led by empathy, it's got curiosity, it understands plasticity, it's calm, it's connected, and it knows that we're all human beings living a human experience. So I'm happy for that to be sent out to everybody, because I think it could be a poster on the wall, it can be an engaging tool with people that don't really understand the difference, and help and support different conversations about how we communicate with each other. So yes.